a page or two to my submission yesterday, and I don't know if it's got through.
Yes, it has.
Okay, right here.
Thank you. Bruce, you know the process. We've got 10 minutes. Over to you.
So I've heard. Thank you. And thank you for taking my submission this morning. I'd certainly like to be brief, and I'm happy to answer questions. And I won't talk through the whole submission at all. On the question of purposes, one of the purposes stated is enabling community participation in the planning of the regeneration of Greater Christchurch, but the bill doesn't really support that purpose. So that's a fundamental problem that I'd ask you to really think about. Turning the page, I've talked there about a section on principles, which I consider is really important and is missing from this bill. I've outlined just 4 possible principles to include in the bill. I've suggested good faith, which I think people in Christchurch might provide a lot of support for that inclusion. I've said transparency is another, public participation as another, and accountability. And we certainly have not had public participation, and we've not had much accountability. And transparency is vital. And turning the page, I've talked about public participation, and I know others have talked about it, and I've provided there a copy of the IAP2 spectrum. And the reason I've provided that is because people talk about engagement and blah, blah, blah. And frankly, all of the engagement we've seen is of the inform, consult side, right down the end. The left-hand side doesn't mean a hell of a lot and doesn't bring the people in. We need to collaborate far more. And that's one of the things that's really been missing in Christchurch. I have been involved in one or two things. I don't come from the public sector, I come from the private sector. And I've been astounded when I've become involved in several public matters. Absolutely astonished. I didn't quite realise it worked like this, but I'm learning fast. And one of the things I got involved in was providing, if you like, some assistance, although not requested. And I've come to the conclusion, and the response to that was incredibly poor. And I'm happy to go into it if you like, but the conclusion I came to is that this city and every city has got enormous capability, skills, resources, experience residing in the community, but it is so hard for that to contribute, and Christchurch desperately needs it. There are skills out there, unbelievable skills and networks, and if you try and contribute, the pushback from the bureaucracy is astonishing. And I'm not talking here about minor stuff with vested interests. What I got involved in was a major exercise, and the dollars are phenomenally large. So it's not about me having a vested interest saying, I want this for me, nothing like that at all. The pushback, astonishing. And so I'm not alone, there are hundreds in every city that can participate. I mentioned Section 12 proponent, and the proponents are basically government institutions or local body institutions. Bring the people into it. That is absolutely essential. We have had planning, 3-4 years of planning, getting nowhere. Avoid the people, you get nowhere. Accountability, this regeneration bill, really, we get the nonsense that accountability is via Parliament or the Council. Accountability, the prime accountability should be back to the citizens. And then I just want to turn to what I added, and a section on planning, and I deliberately hadn't included this when I submitted, because I talked there about 2 very well-known and leading academics, Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner in economics, and Bent Fleur-Bier, a Danish economist, now a Danish planner, who is now at Oxford University. And he says some really interesting things, and the two of them have worked together in recent years. And I note there a lecture, and I'm happy to provide the full notes of that lecture if the committee are interested. But he talks about the planning problems of mega projects. And I posed an email question to him a few days ago. I said, this is the situation in Christchurch. How does this relate to your research on mega projects, which across the world are just disastrous in terms of cost overruns, time overruns, benefits being short. And he came back and said it fits right in. That was his response. And I won't go right through it, you can read that, but he talks in his own words about Machiavelli's formula. And he says, the game gets played like this. You underestimate the costs. You overestimate the revenues. You undervalue the environmental impacts. You overvalue the development effects. And you do all of that stuff. The bureaucracy does all of that stuff, and they get funding. And then you sit back and you go, well, that's not a very good project. And we've seen that in some of the planning. We've seen it in the convention centre. Complete nonsense that's going on with the convention centre. We've seen it in other things. And so the final point, just in this submission, I've put there 4 instruments of accountability from Fleur. And transparency is one of them. Specifying performance, getting very clear on that. The regulatory regime and the risk capital. In conclusion, I'd just like to say that the conclusion I've come to is there's one leverage point, the greatest leverage point in the city for both government and local government is the issue of transparency. There is not transparency. You try and get information and you just don't get it. There's every bit of hindrance under the sun. And there's reasons for that, lack of transparency. Some of the documentation should not be provided because it's not good enough. So we need to change the game in terms of transparency. We need to put principles in this bill so that people actually understand what regeneration should look like.
Bruce, thank you very much. We've got time for, I think, probably one quick question. Eugenie.
Is there any consultation process that has occurred in Christchurch which meets the spectrum of public participation which you would consider a good example?
No.
In New Zealand?
In my view.
Okay.
Oh, I can't answer that. Let's restrict ourselves to Christchurch. My answer would be no.
Bruce, thank you very much, and thank you for the additional material, which is interesting. And thanks for spending time with us this morning. We do appreciate you coming on Saturday. Thank you.